It all started with a chilling accusation. "That's the punishment for stealing my dad from me." Kelly's words echoed in my ears as she dragged me toward the basement. I struggled to resist, but Kelly, being younger and stronger, overpowered me. My heart pounded as she shoved me into the dark, cold space. The door slammed shut and I was left alone in the eerie silence. The basement was damp and musty, with an unsettling chill that seeped into my bones. As the darkness closed in around me, panic began to set in. I was trapped with no way out. My mind raced with thoughts of what Kelly had just done. Why was she so angry? How had our relationship become so twisted? But before I could dwell on these questions, I felt a small object pressing against my thigh. My hand instinctively reached into my pocket, and I realized that my phone was still with me. My name is Olivia Anderson, and at 45 years old, I never imagined finding myself in such a terrifying situation. I work as an administrative assistant, a job that's not too demanding but keeps me busy and content. My life was simple, predictable, and honestly, quite fulfilling. I had a stable career and colleagues who were more like friends, yet despite all this, one thing weighed heavily on my mind. I wasn't married. For years, I watched as my friends found their soulmates, settled down, and built lives together. Each wedding invitation brought a mix of joy and envy. I feared growing old alone, with no one to share my life with. That fear gnawed at me, even as I tried to bury it under work and social gatherings. Then, one day, my life took a turn when I met James Anderson. James was 9 years older than me, charming and kind. He worked for one of our client companies, and our paths crossed often due to work. At first, we were cautious, but gradually, we grew closer. What started as professional interactions soon blossomed into something more. We began dating, and after a few years, we decided to get married. It felt like a dream come true, a chance to finally have the family I had longed for. But this dream came with challenges. James had a daughter from his previous marriage, a 17-year-old named Kelly. From the beginning, Kelly was reserved and distant. She adored her father and clung to him whenever she could. I hoped that over time, Kelly and I would grow closer, that we would form a bond and become a family. But that was just wishful thinking. After the wedding, I moved into the house James shared with Kelly. I left my job to become a homemaker, dedicating myself to making our home a warm and welcoming place. I cooked balanced meals, kept the house spotless, and did everything I could to make life easier for James and Kelly. But no matter how hard I tried, Kelly kept her distance. At first, I chalked it up to her age. Teenagers are known for being moody and rebellious, right? But as the days turned into weeks and then months, Kelly's coldness didn't waver. She ignored my attempts to connect, answering my questions with monosyllables or not at all. The more I tried, the more she seemed to push me away. The only time Kelly seemed at ease was when she was with her cat, Oliver. Oliver was a chubby, sneaky feline who had been with James for years. He was Kelly's constant companion, and I often found her petting him in silence. I envied the ease with which she bonded with the cat, while I struggled to even get her to acknowledge my presence. Time passed, and despite my best efforts, the distance between Kelly and me only grew. 5 years went by, and though we lived under the same roof, we remained strangers. I had no idea what Kelly liked to eat, what her hobbies were, or what she dreamed of. The only thing I knew was that she adored Oliver, and that was a connection I couldn't seem to replicate. Then one day, out of the blue, Kelly spoke to me. I was startled. This was the first time she had initiated a conversation. "How long are you planning to stay in this house?" she asked, her tone sharp. I was taken aback. "What do you mean? How long are you going to stay here? Can you leave soon?" "You're in the way," she said bluntly. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had tried so hard to make this house a home, to be a part of this family, and now Kelly was telling me to leave? I was at a loss for words. As I stood there stunned, Kelly continued, "I love my dad. It was just the two of us before you came along. I can't stand you being here. pretending to be my mother. I wanted to say something to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. All I could think was, how had it come to this? What had I done to make Kelly hate me so much? Kelly's next words cut even deeper. I thought if I ignored you long enough, you'd get the hint and leave. But you're still here, acting like everything's fine. You're not my mother, and you'll never be. So just go. Tears welled up in my eyes. I had tried so hard to be kind, to be patient, but nothing I did seemed to matter. Kelly's words echoed in my mind long after she walked away, leaving me alone in the kitchen. From that day on, Kelly's treatment of me grew even harsher. She criticized my cooking, mocked my attempts to make conversation, and made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with me. It was like living with a stranger who resented my very presence. The worst part was that Kelly put on a facade in front of James. Whenever he was around, she acted sweet and polite, praising my cooking and pretending to be the perfect daughter. But as soon as he was out of earshot, the insults and coldness returned. I felt trapped in a nightmare, with no way to escape. I wanted to talk to James about it, to tell him what was really going on, but every time I tried, I lost my nerve. James was always busy with work, and I didn't want to burden him with my problems. So I kept quiet, hoping that somehow things would get better. But they didn't. 6 years after we got married, Kelly graduated from high school and started working at a company nearby. Around the same time, James began taking more frequent business trips. At first, he was only gone for a few days, but soon his trips stretched to weeks at a time. With James away, Kelly's behavior became even more unbearable. She criticized everything I did, from the way I cleaned the house to the meals I prepared. Every day, she found something new to complain about, and her words cut deeper and deeper. One day, I reached my breaking point. Kelly had just insulted my cooking again, leaving her meal untouched and storming off to pet Oliver. I couldn't take it anymore. "Just get out!" I yelled, my voice trembling with anger. "You're always telling me to leave, but maybe it's you who should go. You have a job, you have money. Why don't you just move out and live on your own?" Kelly was shocked. She wasn't used to me talking back. For a moment, she seemed at a loss for words, but then her face twisted in anger. "What did you say?" she spat, her eyes narrowing. "You can't just kick me out. This is my house, too." "Then stop treating me like a stranger," I shouted back. "I'm tired of being your punching bag. If you can't stand me, then maybe it's time you moved on." For a moment, there was silence. Then, without warning, Kelly lunged at me, grabbing my arm and squeezing it painfully. "Ouch," I cried, trying to pull away, but Kelly's grip was too strong. She dragged me out of the kitchen and down the hall, ignoring my protests. "Let go of me," I yelled, but Kelly didn't listen. She pulled me toward the basement, her face set in a determined expression. Before I could react, she shoved me inside and slammed the door shut. I was left in the darkness, stunned and terrified. What was she going to do? How long would she leave me here? My heart raced as I pounded on the door, pleading for Kelly to let me out. But there was no response. In the cold, dark basement, I started to feel sick. My head spun with fear and confusion. I couldn't believe what was happening. Kelly had locked me up like a criminal, all because she hated me so much. What had I done to deserve this? As the hours passed, my panic grew. I tried to think of a way out, but the basement was solidly built, with no windows or escape routes. The walls closed in around me, and I felt like I was suffocating. Then, I remembered the phone in my pocket. With shaking hands, I pulled it out and quickly dialed my friend Linda's number. "Linda, it's Olivia," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need your help." Linda was at my house within minutes. She pried open the basement door and helped me out, her face filled with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked, guiding me to her car. I nodded, but I couldn't stop shaking. "Kelly, she locked me in there," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't know what she was thinking." Linda shook her head. "Let's get you out of here," she said, starting the car. "You can stay with me until James gets back." As we drove away, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. I was safe for now, but what would happen when James found out? Would he believe me? Would Kelly try to turn him against me? When we reached Linda's house, I sent James a message, explaining what had happened. A few hours later, he called me, his voice filled with concern. "Olivia, are you okay? I'm coming home right now." "James, you don't have to—" "No, I want to," he insisted. "I'll be there in a few hours. Just stay with Linda until I get there." True to his word, James arrived later that night. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were filled with worry. "Olivia, I'm so sorry," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I should have been there. I should have known something was wrong." "It's not your fault," I said, trying to hold back tears. "Kelly's been hiding this from you. I didn't want to worry you, but I can't take it anymore." James nodded, his expression grim. "We need to talk to Kelly. This can't go on." The next day, we returned home, Garzrania bracing ourselves for the confrontation with Kelly. When she arrived, she looked surprised to see James there. "Dad? What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," James said, his voice stern. "Kelly, what you did to Olivia was unacceptable." Kelly's face twisted in defiance. "She deserved it. She stole you from me." "That's no excuse," James replied, his voice firm. "You put her life in danger, Kelly. Do you understand how serious this is?" Kelly's defiance faltered, but she still tried to justify herself. "I just wanted her to leave. I never meant to hurt her." "But you did," I said quietly, stepping forward. "Kelly, I never wanted to replace your mother. I just wanted us to be a family. But you've made it clear that you don't want that." Tears filled Kelly's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "So what now? Are you going to kick me out?" James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Kelly, I love you, but you can't stay here if you're going to keep hurting Olivia. You need to get help. Maybe some time apart will help you see things more clearly." Kelly stared at him, her expression a mix of anger and sadness. "You're choosing her over me." "I'm choosing what's best for everyone," James said gently. "Kelly, I want you to get better, to find a way to be happy. But that won't happen if you stay here and keep lashing out." After a long silence, Kelly finally nodded. "Fine, I'll go. But don't expect me to forgive either of you." With that, she turned and walked out of the house, leaving us standing there in stunned silence. The tension that had hung over us for years seemed to dissipate, replaced by a heavy sadness. James and I spent the next few days in a state of shock. We had hoped for a resolution, but instead, we were left with a broken family. Kelly moved into a small apartment nearby, and though James kept in touch with her, the distance between us all was palpable. Life gradually returned to a new normal. James and I focused on rebuilding our relationship, finding comfort in the quiet moments we shared. Oliver, sensing the change, became even more affectionate, curling up beside us as we sat on the sofa in the evenings. One day, as we sat watching the sunset, James turned to me and said, "Thank you for staying strong, Olivia. I know this hasn't been easy." "It hasn't been easy for you either," I replied, squeezing his hand. "But we're in this together. We'll get through it." As the weeks turned into months, we slowly began to heal. Kelly reached out to us occasionally, apologizing for her behavior and updating us on her life. She started seeing a counselor, and though there was still a long way to go, it was a step in the right direction. The house felt lighter without the constant tension, and James and I found ourselves rediscovering the joy of being together. We took long walks, planned weekend trips, and spent lazy afternoons just talking and laughing. It was like a second honeymoon, a chance to rebuild our lives and our love. Though the pain of the past lingered, we were determined to move forward. We had faced a storm and come out stronger on the other side. And with each passing day, the future looked a little brighter.